In this video, we're going to talk about a function called Countif. And Countif is also a combination of two different things. If helps you make decisions, and count counts how many cells are in a range. So it doesn't look at the numbers in the cells necessarily, just counts like 1, 2, 3, 4, how many cells are in a range. And what we're looking for is Countif. Now let me show you. You know how the if statement works. You really haven't seen count yet, but let me show you what's going on with count. You could say, I want you to count up how many cells are between B3 and B8. So again, it takes in a range. Here's B3 to B8, and when I let go of that and say enter, it gives me 6 because they're in this range. One from right here, there are 6 cells there that have numbers in them, and it counts up every one of them. Now, if I were to delete this 85 and delete that 99, now there are only 4 cells in this range that contain numbers. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Now there's 6. I can delete this guy. Now there's 5. So this just a basic count function counts up how many cells in that range contain numbers. Is what count does by itself. But what we're about to do is we're about to make this fancier. So here it comes. In my count, I could change my mind and say that I want this to be a Countif statement. So a Countif takes a little if, and it also takes in a condition. Now I could say I want you to only count the things in that range if they are A's. And so again, that condition is really strange because it takes some quotes and then it's a question that you worry about. So when I hit this says look in there, only count them if they contain A's. That gave me a 2 because in this range there were 1 and 2 things that contained A's, or that were greater than 92. Now this guy right here, if I change him to a 92, notice this still remains the same because he still answers yes to that question. But then if I change him to 91, now I've got to change in the game because the 100 is the only person that gets counted now. So that is how Countif works. Let me show you another version of Countif. If you don't like this mathiness here, if you don't like having your condition deal with greater than or less than or equal to or whatever, you can actually just say if it contains a certain value. Then you don't have to give it a range of values. So watch this. I'm going to change the game. I'm going to say F3 to F8. So I want to count everything from F3 to F8. Now if I just left it, it would count everything. But I could say, now this, notice, is not a range of values. It is a specific value. So I only count the cell in this range if it contains the letter A. And here I have my 2. Because they're in this range of cells that I told you to look at. I told you to look at this range. There are 2 of those cells that contain A's. And so sometimes that's a little easier because you don't have to do the range. You can just say exactly what you're looking for right there. And yeah, I could change this to really be anything. I could say count it if it contains an F. Oh, that's a bad example because there's 2 F's also. I could say count it if it contains the letter D. Now, there are no D's in that range, so I get 0. Now, let me show you some ways to make that a little fancier. If you're tired of saying a specific range, really if you just care about that entire column of F, all the way down that column, you can say F colon F. And notice how if you look at the blue highlight, it's like the entire column. So if you wanted to do that, that's an option. Also, if you wanted to be a little fancier, here I said I'm saying count the A's, but if I wanted to be a little fancier, I could get some of that algebra mindset and say, really, I want you to count H3. Now H3 is the name of a cell. That cell is a cell that contains the letter A. So instead of you literally typing letter A, you could use a cell reference. So count everything in this column that contains A. It says exactly the same thing. The reason this is a little smarter is because it's more general, and that way, if I were to drag this down, then notice Excel is smart enough to update this reference. So this one changed itself to H4 automatically. This one changed itself to H5 automatically, which is a lot easier than having to type it over and over and over again. Now the thing is, if I had done this with just an A literal A value, so if I had said A, that's fine. The only problem is when I drag this down, that A doesn't get changed. It remains the same because you just said A. So if you wanted to do the copying, you would want to use a cell reference and not an actual literal value. Okay, and that is the Countif statement, which will be handy for you in your assignment.